Hello and welcome back to Down the Forest Path, a seasonal knitting podcast. My name is Nicola and I'm the host and moderator of this podcast. In this podcast, I take you along with me wherever I go and show you the knitting that I do throughout the seasons of the year. It is August and the extremely hot weather in Germany has been broken by a spell of rain that's been lasting for the past few weeks. After months of drought, hearing the rain pattering on the window and seeing the plants and wildlife enjoy the weather makes me happy. While it is still very warm, the weather and grey skies already carry a slight promise of autumn not being too far off with them, with all of the coziness and knitting that will bring. So on this grey and gloomy day, let me take you back a few weeks and tell you about my trip to Skye, where I went to the cutest little wool store right by the seaside and found the most gorgeous handspun yarn. I also have 2 finished objects to show you, 1 cast on and a few little acquisitions. Additionally, introductions are in order since the last podcast I also seem to have acquired 2 additional little family members. So settle in with your knitting and a cup of something cozy and let me take you along to Skye. So in the last podcast episode, you already heard quite a bit about my trip to Scotland. And while we were there, my husband and I went on a little day trip to the Isle of Skye. At first, we were quite unsure if it would be worth it, because it would mean spending a whole day of our vacation on it and also spending like 4.5 or 5 hours in the car in total on that day. But the owner of the first yarn store that we went to, the one in Fort William that I talked about in the last episode, said to definitely do it, because not only was Skye gorgeous, but the drive there would also be really, really scenic and nice. She did, however, recommend to either go super early in the morning or late in the evening and then stay there overnight, because otherwise the roads can get a little bit clogged up, especially in the main tourist season. So we used it to our advantage that we were still on German time, which is an hour ahead opposed to UK time. And since we'd only been in the UK for a few days, our internal clock hadn't quite readjusted yet, so we kept waking up at 6:30 in the morning or 7. So on that day, we just got up super early, had breakfast, jumped in the car and drove up to Skye. And let me tell you, the yarn store owner did not lie. The drive is amazing and it would have been worth going just to experience that scenery of driving there. When you get to the Isle of Skye, you go across a little bridge. I was actually surprised at how close to the mainland Skye is, because I thought the bridge would be a little bit longer, but no, literally it's, as we say in German, a Katzensprung. Cat's jump, so it's I don't know, probably it is actually longer than I remember, but it literally just felt like a normal bridge, and then on the other side of it is the Isle of Skye. And the owner of the Caledonian wool store in Fort William said, if you go, follow the signs with the sheep. And I was like, because apparently the Isle of Skye has an amazing little yarn store that is worth seeing if you go there. So I knew I had to go and I had to check it out. And it was really, really, really close to the bridge that went to Skye. It was maybe 5 minutes drive from there. So I'm really glad we got the recommendation and made the tiny little detour to go there, because it was super worth it. That store is right by the seaside. It's called the Handspinner Having Fun. They also have a website. They ship as well, but only in the UK, I think. And the owner also has a little YouTube channel if you're interested. As you can already tell from the name, there are a lot of handspun yarns in the store. And I had actually never made anything with handspun yarn, so I was quite curious about it. but from what I had heard, it was like prohibitively expensive to do. So while I was really looking forward to going to this yarn store and having a little bit of a look around, I wasn't sure whether I would come away with anything much. So we drove along this little road in the Isle of Skye and then pulled into this tiny driveway that was mostly like little stones, gravel, and there was this beautiful yellow hut, like wooden house, that was just so colorful and happy looking, and it's right by the seaside, and that is the yarn store, that is the Handspinner Having Fun. And the store itself is like full with like shelves and shelves and shelves of wool and hand knit jumpers, and it's a treasure trove. It's so pretty. I did not take any videos in there because the owner had signs up saying please do not photograph or take videos. I think this was mostly aimed at the hand knit jumpers that they sell, because as far as I understood, they're actually not knit according to patterns, but the knitters make them up as they go, so they're unique. Every single jumper is unique, and they because of that they're very precious, and of course you don't want someone to take like lots of pictures of all of them. What made me really happy is that the jumpers were decently priced. I feel like we live in a time where people are encouraged to sell their craft below value, because compared to buying a jumper in the shops, it seems quite expensive to buy a hand knit jumper. But I think that not paying yourself even like minimum wage on top of the materials to knit something up and then give it away is really selling yourself short and selling your craft short. So I was really happy to see that the jumpers that I saw were mostly, I think, in the between 150 and 250 pound range, which is an absolutely appropriate price for a hand knit garment. And this was also made from high quality wool, so you know if you knit that using high quality materials can add up really quickly, and the price of materials for a full jumper is already quite a lot. So I was looking around in this shop and looking at all of the hand spun wool and thinking about potentially getting something. And what I really liked was that the quantities for the skeins were often relatively low. So they had quite a few, like 20-30 gram skeins, which is quite useful if you just want an accent for collar work and things like that. And so I ended up buying quite a bit, and I'm very happy to share my acquisitions with you, which you can already see here a little bit. So the first thing that I got was this handspun merino and silk lace weight yarn here, and it is called Fairground, which I think is quite fitting because the colors are very vivid and it looks a little bit like a carnival. And as I already said, it is not 100 gram, it is 30 grams and approximately 123 meters. So I am not quite sure what I will do with this yet. It's quite colorful and variegated, so it's not something that I would normally knit up into a like lace shawl, for example, because if you use very colorful yarns, you cannot see the lace pattern that well. And the jury's still out on what to do with it, but I think most likely what I will end up doing is I will use this in weaving. Then I have this beauty here, and the camera alone does not do it justice because this is handspun baby camel yarn, and it's also lace weight. This is 25 grams or 169 meters, so I think this will just be enough for a pair of little hand warmers for maybe late autumn when you're reading, and then you just have lacy hand warmers on so that your hands don't get cold when you're reading your book or like cradling a cup of tea. I just saw it and I could already like see the coziness of having something made out of this in front of my inner eye, so it had to come with me. What I also really love about this shop is that they tell you who spun it. So I know this was a person with the initials OB. I don't know more about this person, but it makes me feel really connected somehow, because the shop pays a lot of attention to use high quality materials, and the spinners who work for them either, as far as I understood, live on the Isle of Skye or have a very strong regional connection to it. So for me, this makes me feel more connected to the craft of producing the yarn, and I hope that the person who made it knows that it went to someone who will really respect it and make it into something that will be valued and treasured. I think they probably know, because I think they will get a lot of like real enthusiasts coming there, so it must feel nice for them. I imagine it's quite cozy to make yarn in this slightly more traditional, old-fashioned way, and then kind of wondering and being curious about where it will end up and what it will be. So thank you, OB, for the little baby camel. And if you are watching, then keep tuned, because at some point I think probably 2 little hand warmers will show up on this channel. I'm thinking about the Cloudburst mitten pattern. That's a free pattern on Ravelry. They make beautiful little hand warmers, so I will keep you posted. Then I have this here. So this was a little bit confusing for me, because I fell in love with the colors. The yarn is called Rockpool, the colorway, so that made me feel even more like in love with it, because on the Isle of Skye there's these pools called fairy pools, and they have rocks in them and the water is really blue. And in the afternoon we went and actually saw these fairy pools, and they reminded me of this yarn instantly because of the blue water and then having the colorful orangey coppery rocks in it. So what confused me about this one is this is handspun merino and it says DK weight, but I feel like, I can show you, I feel like it's quite thin for a DK weight, so I'm not sure if I will knit it as a DK. I think I won't. I will probably risk having a bit of a more dense fabric in the end if I'm wrong. The yarn is a bit like mixed with the thickness as well, so there are parts that are quite thin, they're almost like a thread, and then there are parts that are a bit thicker. Let me find one. Yeah, here. Like if you tell me that this is DK, I might still be a little bit like, are you sure? But this is definitely like not lace and it's more of a fingering weight. But yes, I'm not sure how I will use this. Most likely it will also be weaving. But yeah, I don't think I can use it for the colorway yoke in a, for example, Jennifer Steinger sweater as a substitute for a DK or worsted weight. It's a bit too thin for it. So this is 40 grams. It's 85 meters. And the spinner is JW for this one. And then I came away with this beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, chunky baby alpaca wool that is, I think, not handspun but produced for the store. So this is so incredibly soft that I touched it and I was like, this is gonna make me cry. This just feels like hugging a baby alpaca. So I know last time I already talked about the roving that I got, and Christmas presents and stuff like that. But this is a prime candidate for Christmas headbands, Christmas hats, anything like that. It's so cozy. It would make a lovely traditional cabled hat. And I got 2 of them, so I have 200 grams. But yeah, I unfortunately cannot reach out through the screen and let you touch this yarn, because it's literally the softest yarn I've ever owned, I think, and I've had pure cashmere yarn. I made my husband hold this for me while I was like looking for more yarn, and he also just kept like cradling it because it's so incredibly soft and nice. See, it's got a little bit darker out again because the rain clouds are still going strong. So I hope this video is not getting too dark, but I might have to get up in a second and turn on more light, because yeah, it's a gloomy day out there. It's really grey and rainy. So let me check in here. Yeah, that's that, done and dusted. But it's not everything, because so this is my scrap yarn jar, at least for my smaller bits of scrap yarn usually, because then it's kind of in there, it's all fingering weight, and I know I can use it in color work, and I know I have these little bits of yarn left. But it's currently also housing 2 bigger bits of yarn. This and this. And this is also from the Handspinner Having Fun. It is merino and silk, and it's this wonderfully pretty yarn that is really like kind of tonal but has different colors in it. The colorway was called Peanut Butter, which I found a little bit actually underwhelming for how gorgeous this yarn is, because I saw it and I immediately went like, yes, I'm getting enough of this to make something out of, because this is going to be the piece that is my memory piece of going to Skye, and I'm going to keep whatever I make from it really close to my heart and hold it very dear, and that's going to be my souvenir. I kind of like doing it that way more than, I don't know, getting a snow globe from the place I'm going to, even though that's also nice, not dishing on the snow globes. But this is Peanut Butter, and as you can see, it has these gorgeous green grassy bits in it, and it reminded me of peridot, the gemstone, and that's one of my very favorite gemstones. And I got, I think, about 130 grams of it, because I immediately knew I wanted to weave with this. I asked the shop owner, and she said she didn't think it was strong enough for the warp yarn. The warp yarn is the one that kind of runs lengthwise in a scarf that you're weaving, so that's the one that has a lot of tension on it. So she said that she thought if I would use this in a warp, then it might rip in some places, but using it for a weft would be ideal. The weft yarn is the one that goes left and right in a woven garment or scarf or shawl or whatever, and yes, that immediately convinced me to get some of it. I think you can also see here on the camera how kind of like subtly shiny it is and how nice it looks. Yeah, so this is what is left over from my project, and you can already kind of see a corner there, but I will come back to that in a second. So these were the Isle of Skye Handspinner Having Fun acquisitions. And as I said, if you're curious, then check out their website. I will also link it below. And yeah, you can read up everything about them there, and maybe also follow their YouTube channel. So I really enjoyed spending time on the Isle of Skye. And while we were there, we also managed to see Old Man's Store, which is a really iconic stone formation. We went to the fairy pools and looked at those like really blue pools with the rocks in it that I talked about earlier. And we also went to the Fairy Glen, which was such a strange landscape. It looks like straight out of a fairy tale. It was really, really, really pretty. It has these kind of cones, little hills in there that you can walk through, and you feel like you kind of stumbled into a movie set of the Shire. But it's just the natural landscape there. So we had a full day. We also found a really nice cafe called the Coffee Bothy, and I can just recommend that to everyone who is going to the Isle of Skye. The coffee was good. I had an iced coffee because it was kind of a warm day even for non-Scottish temperatures, but for Scotland it was extremely warm, so I had an iced coffee, which was nice. But the cake is amazing. They bring you pieces of cake that are huge, like insane. It's I got a double tiered cake, and I think it was poppy seed, and then it had these like cream cheese layers between it and lemon curd, and let me tell you, that cake kept me fueled for the explorations the whole day. So if you go to the Isle of Skye, then give the Coffee Bothy a visit. After we returned to Fort William and Glencoe, we still spent a few days in Scotland, which were also extremely nice. I would always go back there. And I managed to take a train over the famous viaduct that is near Glencoe. So Glenfinnan it's called. And there's usually a steam train that runs across it. I think at the moment it was suspended, but is now been reinstated again. I'm not fully up to date on that story, but there's also a normal train line that goes over it, and as much fun as it would have been to go with a historic steam train, going in a normal train was also really nice. While we were sightseeing, I also took my knitting with me basically everywhere. I had a really small shawl project I had started and I was working on. I think I actually have the project bag. Is it this one? No, it's not this one, unfortunately. But I had this really small shawl project that I had just started, so I was on the stockinette stitch part of it. And I just kept knitting whenever we were just driving places, going somewhere when it wasn't like especially scenic. And that is just such a nice memory for me as well, because I knit on this shawl in this train. I knit on this shawl on top of a mountain. I knit on this shawl while like traveling with my husband in the car, crossing the Scottish border, going to Hadrian's Wall. So all of these travel memories are kind of wrapped up in this shawl, which I have now not touched since we've returned from Scotland, so I have to really keep knitting on it. But there have been quite a few changes in my life, which I will talk about in a minute, that have meant that lace knitting is a tiny bit more difficult than usual right now, especially when the yarn is fragile. So the yarn I'm using for it is this wonderful Mondschaf. I think the yarn quality is called Leo yarn, which is alpaca, linen, and I think silk. I'm not 100% sure on that. And it is beautiful, but it's also very fine. And it's something that little sharp claws and teeth might rip. And you're going to see in a minute why that is right now a bit of an issue. So let's talk about the finished objects of this episode. The first finished object I want to talk about is this woven scarf. I'm going to open it up so you can see. So this is the scarf I wove out of the wonderful peanut butter yarn I just showed you. And the jar is now not coming unstuck, so excuse me. So this one that I just showed you a minute ago is the leftovers of this shawl. And for the warp yarn, so for the more stable one, I used a skein of Mondschaf yarn in the quality Cassiopeia, I think it's called. So that was silk, yak and something else, and that's a bit more sturdy than this handspun fingering weight yarn. And as you can see for the weft, I used the yarn I got in Skye, so the little color variations are showing as little stripes that are going sideways and not lengthwise. I don't know if you can see, but I think the camera is good enough, right? Let me hold it up close. So you can also see the little green in here, like right there, and the little orange specks that are there as well. And I made this quite long because I wanted it to be usable in autumn and winter without getting cold, but also as a kind of like throw around shoulders in spring. In summer there's no way, but so I'm also going to take this off after I've filmed this segment of the episode. But there it is. I finished it with a little fringe, which I also really like. I think it came out super cute, and it's long enough to wrap around my neck and then wrap around again in the front. So there you see it. I never know how to really talk about my weaving on this podcast, because I know most of you are knitters, so please let me let me know in the comments if you don't find this interesting, because I'm curious about your feedback. Also, since this is woven and it doesn't really have any like stripes or something like that, there is no pattern for it, so there is really not so much to talk about with this. It's woven on a rigid heddle loom. A rigid heddle loom is a beginner-friendly loom. It is my second loom. Before I had it, I had one of those like crafts looms that you give to children in school. That was a frustrating experience to try and weave like scarves on it. I would not recommend it. I would say get a rigid heddle loom if you're curious about weaving. I think they've gone up in price, unfortunately, quite a bit since I got mine. I got mine as a birthday present from my husband and parents, so that was a super nice surprise, and I've used it quite a lot. But yes, this was woven on a rigid heddle loom, and what is really nice about weaving is that it is quite fast. So I wove in it for I think a few afternoons, and then it was done, and I was going for a bit of a like speed weaving experience because I had already heddled the loom, so put the warp yarn on it. I think I actually have a bit of footage from that I can put over here so you can kind of see how it goes as a time lapse. But I had already put this yarn on it, and then we got the news that we could adopt our two newest family members, which I will talk about in a minute, a bit earlier than we had originally thought. So suddenly I was like, oh god, I can't have all of this yarn just on this loom lying around when the two of them come, because that's going to be stressful. They might eat it, they might like ingest it and get medical problems. I have to finish this. So before they moved in, I had a few evenings where I was just weaving like crazy, like trying to finish this in time. And I managed the evening before, I think. And this is a memory of that time, a memory of Skye, a memory of looking forward to those two little creatures moving into our home. And so this scarf will stay with me. I will not gift it away. And I'm very happy with it. I can't wait to wear it more in autumn and winter, which are seasons I like more than summer anyway. So this is something else to look forward to. And the second finished object of this episode I am wearing right now. Most of you will recognize at a glance that this is a ranunculus, because this is one of the most knit patterns on Ravelry. I think this is the most popular sweater on Ravelry. There is thousands and thousands and thousands of projects of it, and it's a gorgeous pattern that yields this result here. I think this came out really nice. This is knit in Drops Bomool yarn, which is cotton and linen. So as you can see, it's quite rustic, and that's exactly the look I was going for with this. I wanted something that was made from a kind of cool-ish yarn that would not heat me up too much, so I could wear it on summer evenings, that I could kind of dress up and down depending on the occasion. I think that works really well with this as well. I think you can wear it quite relaxed with just a nice relaxed pants, but you could also wear it over a little black dress to dress it up a little bit with a nice necklace or piece of jewelry. And I knit this in the older version of the pattern. So Ranunculus is a pattern by Midori Hirose, and originally it was a one-size-fits-all pattern, which obviously it did not. One size fits most is more accurate for it, and I have the luxury of just basically fitting this pattern perfectly as it was originally written. She has since updated the pattern, and it is meant to be worn with a lot of positive ease, so you don't have to look out for the gauge that much. But I think the new version of the pattern goes from, I think, 100 something centimeter of circumference around the chest to 180 centimeters, so it accommodates quite a lot of different body types. For me, this size, which is I think now the size 3 in the new version of the pattern, fits really well. So I knit the old version of the pattern because there it was the only size in it. So I don't have to highlight anything. I can just knit it as like one pattern because it doesn't have different numbers in it, and because I can be a little bit kind of chaotic with that, I find it easier because there's no risk for me getting confused with the numbers and slipping up and making a mistake and suddenly ending up with a really weird stitch count that I did not intend to have. So as you can see, Ranunculus, it's a top-down sweater. It has a lace yoke with these cute little lace elements. So here it has these details that kind of look a bit like cables, but they're not. It's a different technique that's quite simple. Then you have these kind of pearl stitch looking design elements here that go around, and then these yarn over, I don't know what to call them, crosses around here, and then it's kind of finished off with another set of these little cable looking details. So I really like this pattern. It was one of the first sweater patterns that I ever knit, and for me back then it looked quite complicated. Now I think it's a breeze to knit, but I also improvise quite a bit. So the sleeves are usually improvised by me. I just kind of make them up as I go along with my ranunculi. So far that's always worked out nicely. I also often make it a little bit longer than it is intended. It is originally a cropped sweater, but I find that then I only wear it over certain dresses and I don't wear it as much as I would like. So I make mine a little bit longer so I can wear them like a regular jumper as well. What I like very much about the Ranunculus pattern is that it can be knit in a variety of different yarn strengths. So I've seen ranunculi that were one strand of lace weight yarn that looked amazing, and I've seen ranunculi that were knit out of DK or worsted weight yarn that also looked amazing. So every yarn strength will give you a different feel for the finished garment. You can knit something light and airy for summer, you can knit something dense for autumn and winter, and it's all accommodated within this one pattern, so you can have a ranunculus for every season. and it will come out nicely and pretty. Also, because so many people have knitted before, I really like to look in the notes for the pattern and the finished projects, because chances are someone has knitted in the yarn that you are thinking about using, and you can look at it and see how it came out. So that's a luxury that's surely because so many thousands of people have knitted before, but I find it invaluable to be able to see how a garment will roughly look, because I like to experiment with yarn substitutions. Since I am based in Germany, I often don't have the yarn that patterns suggest I use, and I can only get it by paying ridiculous import fees. So I often substitute yarns, and I really like it when I can actually anticipate how it might come out. So I think there were quite a few people that had knitted in the drops bommel, and I liked what I saw, so I went for it with this kind of like rustic brown color of it. I do have the yarn, how do you call it, like the label, the banderole here, so let me get one out for you so I can tell you exactly what percentages this yarn consists of. So this is, come on, don't leave me this way. Here we go. So 50%, 53% cotton, 47% linen. This is a workhorse yarn. This is sturdy. I already noticed during the knitting that it was soft anyway. It was not splitty, even though it consists of several different strands kind of meshed up into one. And once I was done with it, I just chucked the finished garment into the washer. That came out beautifully and fine, and it fully survived it. I did use a little satchel, like a lacy mesh thing that you can put your jumpers in so they don't get tumbled around too badly and the arms stretch out. And afterwards, but I don't think that is recommended on the yarn. I even put it in the dryer and it came out nicely. So I'm really happy with the yarn for this. I would definitely buy it again for late summer, autumny tops, sweaters. I think this is really nice. Also, I find it quite important, this aspect of knitting as well, because I feel like knitting can often be a little bit uninclusive to people who don't have huge budgets to spend on yarn available. This is a very budget-friendly yarn. I got 50 gram of it in sale. I think back then it was something between €1.80 and €2.20 for 50 gram. And in total, I think this project will have cost me around 15 euros to make. So I have a beautiful jumper that I made that fits me, my measurements, and it has cost me hours and hours of my time. So that's where the added value is, but it's only cost me 15 euros. I'm someone who often splurges on shawl yarns and saves on the sweater quantities. That's a way how I keep my knitting a little bit more budget friendly for me. No shade on you if you spend like lots on sweater quantities of yarn. I have definitely splurged on a few sweaters, and I have at least 2 Malabrigo sweater quantities lying around here, so it's not like I never do it, but I find that a lot of these yarns that drops do, especially the cottony yarns, are really high quality and definitely will give you results that are wearable and that come out beautifully and that will not crash your wallet in that sense. So this is the Ranunculus. Let me stretch a little bit so you get a better view. And as you can see, I'm really happy with it. I think it's pretty. I think this is actually the 5th Ranunculus I've knit, which is, where did the time go? So if you are curious about the other ones, if you want a video about all of the other ranunculi, Ranunculi, then let me know in the comments, because I might at some point do it if there's like interest in it. And then I can also show you what they look like in different yarn weights, because they come out super differently. The fingering weight one looks more a bit like a throw for the summer, whereas the more sturdy ones, yeah, as I said before, are suitable for different seasons. And then I also have a cast on to show you, which I store very securely at the moment in this bag with a zipper. It's this cute little rucksack kind of thing that I got from my mother-in-law. So this is housing my newest cast on, and the newest cast on, I don't know if it is already recognizable, probably not, because at the moment it is the beginnings, the gentle, shy beginnings of a yoke. So maybe you can see a little bit that here we have this beautiful lace yoke, and I've just come to a part where there's a, for me, new technique of a wraparound. So this cast on is the Kuutar Tee by Sari Nordlund. Sari is a Finnish knitwear designer, and she makes beautiful knitting patterns. This is the first one that I'm knitting. I've just been quietly admiring them from afar so far, but I knew I just really wanted to knit one sooner or later. And since my mother-in-law discovered this very, very, very pretty linen yarn that I got quite a bit of now, I decided that now was the time to knit the Kuutar Tee. Also, aren't these needle stoppers super cute? I'm just in love with how summery and adorable they are. And as you can see, this is knit on quite small needles. This is a size, I don't know the US sizes. This is a 3mm knitting needle. And as you can also see, I am a coward. I put little stitch markers whenever I knit lace. I put them between every single repeat. So this looks a bit like confetti at the moment, because it has stitch markers literally everywhere. So I never really get to take pretty pictures of my yokes all like laid out looking gorgeous, because there's always just a ton of stitch markers in the way, making it look a little bit haphazard. But this is going to be this beautiful tee. I will probably, yeah, it doesn't look like much right now. I will probably make the sleeves a little bit longer than described in the pattern. Kuutar is apparently a Finnish word that means goddess of the moon. So I went for this pale gray to kind of honor this moonlight theme of the pattern. I'm super happy with the yarn so far. I will talk more about it in a later episode when I've finished this tee. And the pattern is so far really clearly written. I did not have any difficulties with it. As I said, I'm in the lace yoke, which starts right after the ribbing of the neckline. So I'm still quite at the beginning of it, but I am knitting the chart right now. It has a chart, but it also has written instructions. So that's really nice, because I remember when I started knitting lace, I was always knitting from the written instructions. Now I mostly use the chart, but there's something in there for everyone. So far this is not super complicated. This is really fun, and I'm looking forward to returning to the sofa after filming this episode and just keeping going with this tee, because I cannot wait to wear this. And I also want to finish it so that I still get some wear out of it before the summer is over. Probably famous last words, because the summer's almost getting there, but maybe I still get a bit of wear out of it in September, because it can stay quite warm in Germany in September as well, and maybe it's still warm enough to wear this. So I will keep you posted how this is going. The yoke is based on a like stitch pattern from the Japanese knitting stitch Bible by Hitomi Shida. I think I have to get that book because I see it recommended everywhere. I did not so far because, as I said, when I started knitting lace, I was knitting only from written instructions, and I think the book only has charts, but now I feel a bit more secure, so probably time to actually get that book and give it a go as well. There's one further acquisition, or technically two, I still wanted to share with you, because once we returned back to Germany, Mondschaf, which is an indie dyer who lives quite close to where I actually live, had an open studio day. Usually she sells her yarn online, or like I think it's 2 or 3 people working there now, so usually they sell the yarn online, but once or twice a year they open the studio and you can come there and you can look at all the yarn. It's really, really pretty. She also sometimes does workshops. I think you can probably also buy some yarn then, but I'm not actually sure. But you can go there, you can look at the yarns. They have cake, they have coffee, it's really cozy. There's people sitting around knitting. There's groups of friends coming in chatting about yarn. So it's a lovely atmosphere, and you get to look at all of the yarns and also all of the new colorways. Sometimes she has like a exclusive colorway that's not yet in the shop, or a yarn quality that's only coming to the shop a little bit later. And that was also the case this time. So I went to the open studio day, and I know I have kind of this yarn embargo on myself now. I have managed to stick with that mostly, but I did still buy stuff. So let me show you what I actually came away with. Sorry for the slightly shaky camera. I hope it's going to calm down in a minute. So I got this beautiful project bag that is made out of hand-dyed fabric that she dyes herself in the studio. And as you can see, it has a zipper. It's quite big, so it fits bigger projects as well. And I got it because it reminds me of kelp underwater when the sunlight is shining through it. We watched a David Attenborough documentary recently where there was like, I think, otters swimming around in kelp, and it looked so much like this that for me, I really wanted to take this home with me because I don't have enough good project bags. I always love a good project bag, so I splurged on this. Well, I say splurge, it's not like it's too expensive for what it is because it's handmade out of handmade fabric, but compared to usual project bags, this was a little bit of a splurge for me, and I love it. I'm super happy with it. And I got one skein of yarn that I couldn't go home without. So let me show you. This is the colorway The Witcher, and it's on her Vega yarn quality, which is 70% alpaca, 20% silk, and 10% cashmere. And you can really tell the cashmere in here. This is super, super, super soft. This is 800 meters, so it's enough for okay, there's something funny going on here and I can show you in a minute. It's 800 meters, so that's enough for a huge shawl or 2 small ones, or whatever I want to do with it. I'm not 100% decided yet, but I'm sure I will come up with something pretty for this pretty yarn that is mostly like green, white, but then has this beautiful yellow sprinkles in it. So what was funny here is that someone decided to wear this project bag as a hat. In the 10 seconds I was not paying attention. So that brings me to the next update. And as I said, there are introductions to be made, because since the last podcast episode we have acquired 2 new family members. So let me introduce you to Pippin, or Peregrine Took. Pippin. He's a bit sleepy right now. Pippin, do you want to look there so that people can see you? Yes. Thank you. So this is Pippin. And then, hi. His brother Gandalf has also joined us, which I will show you in a minute if he wants to. But as you can imagine, that has quite changed. Has quite changed the knitting rhythm of this household, because these are kittens. They are still babies. They're 4 months old right now. We've had them for the past 5 weeks, and babies get up to a lot of mischief, or toddlers as they are probably kind of close to now. So bye bye Pippin. We had to, yes, he likes to talk a lot. He is very vocal. So I've had to change quite a few habits around my knitting, how I store my yarn, how I store my things. I am someone who leaves projects out a lot usually. That's not possible anymore at all because safety is paramount and kittens like to get into things they can tangle themselves up in. They can also just shred your knitting to pieces, but that's beside the point. What's more of a concern to me is that they can ingest string, which is really, really dangerous to them. So you want to avoid that at all cost, which if you have a string related hobby is not always the easiest task. So after this episode is filmed, I will immediately tidy everything away again. So far this has been good, knocking on wood. This has not been an issue, they don't care about it, but I cannot leave projects out that have little enticing bits of string dangling from them, because that's what they find interesting, because it looks like their toys. So a lot of projects bags have been employed, especially the ones with the zippers, because if they have the little drawstrings, then that's again a string that they find interesting. So I've had to change quite a few of my habits around that. It has slowed down my knitting speed a bit, which I fully expected. It's slowly picking up again now that they've settled a bit. The first few weeks it was the most important thing to me to create a home that they just feel relaxed and safe in, not constantly take them away from stuff. That's worked really well. They're completely settled. They have now flopped over straight away again. Hi Pips. He's staring up at me from under the table. And yes, we're just extremely excited that we have these two living with us now, and it's just made our lives so much richer, and we're so happy with them. So I'm really excited every morning I wake up at the moment, because I open the door and I see their little faces because they sleep in the living room. I don't know what to tell you, it's amazing. Of course, kittens are quite a lot of work, so that's good to keep in mind, but it also is made easier. Hi, do you want to come back up? He wants back up. It's also made a lot easier that there are two. No. Not the nose. No licking. Not the face, but the hands fine. So it's made a lot easier by the fact that there's two of them, because they keep each other company, they keep each other busy and out of trouble. They also get each other into trouble, but not quite as much as they otherwise would. They entertain each other quite a lot. You still need to play with kittens a lot, because otherwise they end up bored, anxious, sad. That's the last thing you want. So we're quite busy at the moment. That comes out of my knitting time, of course. So I'm not quite as productive as I used to be. He is a shoulder cat. Aww, and he's a Velcro kitty, so we had to even get a little bag that he will get in by himself, because he likes to just be around and see everything that you're doing and what you're getting up to. So we have this little bag, open it up, he'll jump straight in, and then he can keep us company while we do household and other things. Pips, what are you getting up to? Yeah. So that's Peregrine Took. Point in case he's thinking about jumping up on the shelf. Yes, I would like to keep my ink pot if possible, and I do like that vase. Boop. But honestly, if they throw stuff over, it's kind of my fault, because I didn't put it aside, so it's not on them. So this is Gandalf the Grey, who is named for the color of his coat, as it's quite obvious. and they are brothers. They're from the same litter. Hi, is it scratchy? Yeah. Without a doubt, they will feature in future episodes, so you will see a bit of them here and there, but you don't have to worry. This is not becoming a cat podcast. This is not becoming a pet podcast. He likes to perch like a falcon, and sometimes he just stays there, sometimes he goes, but sometimes he's just stuck there like this for 10 minutes, which is quite good workout in a sense. Oh, you saw the yarn, so I'm putting that lid back on. So yes, it's been an amazing time, and looking forward to spending hopefully at least the next 20 years with these two, because they are wonderful. That's it from my side today. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope to see you soon, depending on how my knitting speed recovers, because I don't see the point in filming if I can't show you anything, like if I don't have any cast-ons, finished objects, stuff like that. Sorry, the camera is shaky right now. Gandalf found it, he's nose whooping it. But anyway, thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you had fun. If you did, then there's a subscribe button below, so if you haven't subscribed yet, then go for it, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye!